and back to the like the New York Times and their particular emphasis on these accounts of mass rape and like taking in like what we all know about like armed conflict and sexual violence. I really think that like for the average Times reader and like to the liberal media consuming audience, people were so ready to accept like the most extreme version of these events because they've been steeped for years in a kind of birth of a nation style racism about Arab and Muslim men in particular. But like it's the most effective because this comes from like the liberal media, right? Like an outlet like the New York Times. Like how do you view what's regarded in America as like the liberal media, like at the particularly useful role that they play in laundering a lot of this propaganda to their audience?
Yeah, I mean, this is so important to look at the kind of cultural environment that makes this possible. One thing is that this idea of Arab men, Muslim men, and black men as rapists is very old. It's a very old colonial trope. Of course, what was the accusation that got Emmett Till murdered? That he had touched or
Whistled.
looked at or whistled at a white woman. And this also goes back to the American, the European, I should say, conquest of this continent, when the notion that native indigenous men or enslaved black men are brutes who are a danger to white women or settler women. This is a very deep old racist trope. It existed in South Africa and across the colonized world, and it is fundamental also to Israeli racism and to these accusations. And then you marry that to the kind of Me Too and Believe Women era of liberal thinking. Of course, we should take seriously what women say. But the irony here is there are no women to believe, because not a single living victim, actually not even a single dead victim of sexual violence, has been specifically identified. So they're all going around saying, "Oh, believe Israeli women. If you don't believe these allegations, you're a monster who supports rape and hates Jews." That's the subtext of this. But of course, it wasn't about believe Israeli women. It's believe the Israeli government, believe Israeli atrocity propaganda. And of course, it's no coincidence that they trotted out Hillary Clinton to back up these allegations. And she actually put out a video, I think it was back in December, where she says, we have to believe all the Israeli women and girls who come forward and talked about what they witnessed and suffered. And whoever prepared that text for her was careless, because at that time and until now, not a single Israeli woman or girl has come forward and said, "I experienced this myself." That hasn't happened. And yet she's holding a whole conference tomorrow as we're speaking. I'm not sure exactly what day this goes out, but on February 9th, she's holding this whole conference at Columbia University to again spew this atrocity propaganda. And guess who else will be there? Jeffrey Gettleman of the New York Times.
Right. I mean, it's just like the way I've conceived it from the beginning is that like Israel knew what they were going to do, what they always wanted to do. They knew what it was going to look like on TV, even in a heavily sanitized context. And what would justify that? It's like, if you're going to do something unspeakably evil, you have to come up with an accusation that the people you're doing it to have done something even more unspeakably evil. So that when you see those images on the news, they want you in your head to just immediately think, oh, like that's what's preventing the next rape and torture from happening, the next atrocity from happening to you or us, broadly defined.
Yeah, and of course, atrocity propaganda of this kind is always used. People say, well, oh, yes, sexual violence is very common in wartime, and that may be true, but so is war propaganda common in wartime, and atrocity propaganda, and we have to be careful about that. I mean, remember that it was Hillary Clinton's State Department in 2011 that disseminated the atrocity propaganda that turned out, surprise, surprise, to be a lie, that Libyan forces were being given Viagra and told to go out and rape people as a weapon of war. That was not true. and yet it was used to incite Americans to support Barack Obama's war to overthrow the government of Libya and turn it, in fact, into a place where now migrants and refugees suffer the most horrific abuses, including systematic human trafficking and sexual trafficking and torture. That's the result of Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton saving the world and using this kind of atrocity propaganda.